Next is Zoe St. Pierre. Delegate St. Pierre, good morning.
Good morning, Public Health Committee, Madam Chair.
If I could ask you to speak right into...
Sorry.
And you can move it.
Okay, is this better?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thanks. So good morning, everyone. My name is Zoe St. Pierre. I'm a student at law with the Canadian Environmental Law Association, also known as CELA. CELA is a specialty legal aid clinic dedicated to environmental equity, justice, and health. And I'm here today to talk about the City of Hamilton's Community Heat Response Plan. We want to acknowledge the importance of extreme heat being recognized by the city, and for this, we commend you all. However, we don't think this plan is enough given the severity of the issue. We, along with our ally organizations, respectfully request the City of Hamilton create a maximum heat bylaw, which recognizes a maximum indoor temperature of 26 degrees Celsius in all rental units. Extreme heat is a public health emergency. It's one of the more noticeable and dangerous impacts of climate change, and Canada and Hamilton specifically will be affected more than most places by extreme heat. In order to not repeat the past, we need to deal with extreme heat proactively. The breakdown of deaths from the BC heat wave from a few years ago, for instance, is really striking. 90% of the 619 people who died due to the heat were over 60 years old. 91% were registered with at least one chronic disease. Deaths were higher among those living in socially or materially deprived neighborhoods, and 98% of heat-related deaths occurred indoors. Most of those 619 people who died were in homes without adequate cooling. Similar findings were also reported after the 2018 Quebec heat wave that claimed almost 100 lives. Public cooling centers don't serve the elderly, people with mobility issues, people with disabilities, people with respiratory problems, and families with young children adequately. Giving out water and ice to drink and opening public pools free of charge, although beneficial, is not enough. The majority of people that died during these extreme heat events died in their homes, so we need a solution that's also in people's homes. Hamilton can be a champion in advocating and protecting its residents from extreme heat. The Intact Center on Climate Adaptation recently released a report indicating that Hamilton faces the second highest risk of extreme heat in all of Ontario. According to the 2021 census, there's about 76,000 renter households in Hamilton, and over 250,000 people are 60 years or older. So these are the people we need to protect. And as you know, Hamilton has an already robust climate adaptation plan. Throughout the plan, actions are already being undertaken by the city, and new ones are also proposed relating to extreme heat. Namely, Action 1.2 explains the creation of guidelines and incentives to improve the resilience of landlords to extreme heat. Action 3.1 aims to develop and implement a response program for vulnerable populations to protect residents from extreme heat. And Action 3.3 aims to coordinate local efforts to address excessive indoor temperatures in rental housing specifically. A maximum heat bylaw would be a great result coming from these actions. We have prepared a model bylaw, and you should receive it once you receive our package. The language would be very similar to the wording of the Provincial Residential Tenancies Act as it relates to minimum temperatures. That was the draft language that we used when we prepared this bylaw, and it would apply to all habitable spaces. It would require every residential unit to be equipped with cooling equipment and able to maintain a maximum indoor temperature of 26 degrees Celsius. And it would be the landlord's responsibility to buy, properly install, and maintain the cooling equipment. So once again, we want to commend the city in taking an important first step and acknowledging that extreme heat is an important and dangerous threat to the residents of Hamilton, but it needs to go further. We believe a maximum heat bylaw would protect the most vulnerable more adequately. Thank you.
Thank you for your delegation. Councillor Clark, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'd like to ask our delegate if she could explain her role with CELA and perhaps what is CELA a little bit further than that.
Thank you.
Yes, CELA, Canadian Environmental Law Association, is a specialty legal aid clinic funded by Legal Aid Ontario. I am the articling student. It is a specialty legal aid clinic that focuses on environmental equity, environmental justice, and health. And we have a province-wide mandate.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. And I think it's important that we understand what your role is with CELA and what CELA is. Can I ask a secondary question, if I may? We are not, unlike many municipalities, some staff have argued with me in the past that this is more of a provincial matter, not a municipal matter, that we don't have the ways and means to actually do what we're being asked to do. Can you speak to that,
Yes.
please?
Yes.
Delegate.
So the Municipal Act gives broad powers to municipalities. It gives them the power to enact bylaws on a variety of issues, including the local health of its citizens, the safety and protection of their residents and property. They can enact bylaws relating to the environment, and many more. I believe it's Section 10.2 of the Municipal Act.
Thank you, and that helps clarify a few more issues. When I'm looking at this issue, and I may be looking at it too simply, the city provides supports to residents when they don't have heat. We require that landlords and provide heat. Is this a similar bylaw that you're asking us to create now?
Delegate St. Pierre.
Yes, it would be very similar. Once again, we see this as two sides of the same issue. So Hamilton already has a bylaw, and many municipalities have a bylaw requiring a minimum heat, and that's recognized in the Residential Tenancies Act. So like I mentioned, the model bylaw that CELA has drafted does pull language from there, as well as the regulations under the RTA, so it would be very similar to that.
And last question, just again, to clarify for me, does the Residential Tenancy Act, in your review, have a requirement for a threshold for extreme heat?
It does not.
Thank you. Thank you for attending today.
Thank you. Councillor Wang.
Thank you. Thank you, Delegate St. Pierre. Leading with some of the questions that Councillor Clark is asking, so how fully baked is your bylaw that you've drafted? I know it's draft is one word, but I'm just understanding how fully baked it is.
It is a draft. The idea behind drafting it was to have something ready to present to municipalities who are interested, and they can make any modifications they see necessary. But like I said, it is modeled after language from the Residential Tenancies Act, which is obviously already a statute here in Ontario, and as well as minimum temperature bylaws that already exist as well.
Okay. And through you, Chair, you said that this is going to be sent in a package. So what did you mean by that? Is that something that's coming to us physically, or what does that look like?
Yeah, so we prepared a handout package. I believe, from my understanding, after the delegations are accepted, then the handout, you will receive the handout packages, but it's there.
I'm getting a nod from Elsie Gauthier, and I'd like to recognize them now.
Through the chair, the handout will be published to the agenda following today's meeting, so it'll be available publicly for all to see.
Oh, okay.
And I can send a note to members indicating that with the link.
Thank you.
I can also provide additional documents for anyone who is interested.
Thank you. Councillor Wang.
My last question, and actually it was one that Councillor Francis and I were just trying to understand is that where does a landlord-tenant board kind of act in this sort of regard? I guess can any bylaw that potentially you draft that we adopt or we draft that gets adopted, can it be overridden by the landlord-tenant board?
Right. So I will just preface this as I'm not a lawyer yet, so I can't give any legal advice. But when it comes to statutory interpretation rules and potential conflicts between two statutes, so whether it be a provincial statute and a bylaw, only when there is a true conflict will there have to be the exercise of statutory interpretation to really see if there is a conflict. And a conflict only arises when there is one statute that says yes and the other says no, or one forbids explicitly what the other allows. From our preliminary analysis, we don't see this becoming a conflict, especially because it would be strengthening an already existing power that is conferred through the RTA. It would have the same goal as the RTA to protect tenants, so we do not at this time see it causing any conflict.
Okay.
Councillor.
Thank you. I'll leave the rest of my questions to staff at the end of all of this. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Councillor Taddison, followed by Councillor Alex Wilson, then Councillor Pauls. Councillor Taddison, please.
Hi, Delegate St. Pierre. Did you state in your information today that you're looking for a maximum of 26 degrees Celsius for indoors? Is that correct?
Correct.
What's the science behind that 26 degrees? Is there research that shows that beyond that temperature that it detrimentally affects? Like why is that the limit, 26 degrees Celsius, which is for old timers like me, just shy of 79 degrees Fahrenheit?
Careful.
Yes, I'm not a lawyer or a scientist, but it is recognized by the literature, by the scientific bodies who have done studies. I could provide you with some resources, but 26 degrees is a recognized safe threshold, a safe temperature. And we know that when the body can't maintain its inner temperature of 36.6, then that's when it becomes detrimental. So I will leave it at that.
Thank you.
I don't have any further questions. Thanks for that. I'll do some research.
Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Taddison, respectfully, that would be a good question for our medical officer. Councillor Alex Wilson.
Thank you, and thank you through the chair to Delegate St. Pierre. Really appreciate that, and just following up on Councillor Clark's questions regarding kind of the role of CELA. A large part of that is we have environmental a Bill of Rights in Ontario. We have some of these kind of big picture things, and CELA has helped us understand how does this aspiration in this law actually get practiced? How do we achieve our rights to environment? Could you speak a little bit more about, sometimes often we hear that the law is static, or we say we don't have this ability right now, or we may, I mean, there's presented a brief that says we do, but for folks maybe wondering that we don't have the right powers or that the province should lead, could you speak to the dynamic nature of law? So for example, I think we're the only two people in this room that maybe were born after the Environmental Bill of Rights passed in Ontario. So everyone else has seen that change in this room and has seen environmental rights come on board for the very first time. That journey is still coming forward in many ways. Could you talk about changes in the law, the role of municipal leadership in those changes as well?
Okay.
Briefly,
Delegate.
we could be here a while. Yes, so like I explained to Councillor Clark, municipalities are really well positioned to enact rules and regulations and bylaws that protect their residents. There is leading case law that comes from the Supreme Court of Canada, which recognizes municipalities are the best poised to reflect and understand the needs of its local citizens. So municipalities do have that broad jurisdiction and that power. There is environmental case law that does stem from the Supreme Court. So we can think of the leading case is really the Spray Tech case. It came out of Quebec. It was about a municipality who wanted to pass a bylaw restricting pesticide use, and ultimately the Supreme Court did allow the bylaw. It was ruled as constitutional, and it did not override the provincial authority, which we know the province also regulates environment. But as the local elected officials of its residents, there is a bunch of case law that does recognize municipalities as being in that best position to understand the local needs of its residents. And there is also legislation that also enables that. So we can think of the Municipal Act, the Planning Act, and the Health Promotion and Protection Act.
Thank you so much for that, Delegate St. Pierre. And through you, Chair, I just want to follow up on the Health Protection and Promotion Act, because I think you've painted a very clear picture for us about how this legal framework is unfolding. It's very new in a Canadian context. It's about 20 years old exactly. And so as we move forward, we're going to find new things. But we also talk about how the climate is in itself changing, and we're in a new environment there as well. Could you talk about what the role of the Health Promotion and Protection Act is for Ontario municipalities to identify new environmental threats, what some of our powers are, and how this issue maybe fits within that legislation?
Yes, I don't know the Health Promotion Act off the top of my head, but we do know that the medical officers of health do have a broad range of powers to declare and make orders. We know with the COVID-19 pandemic that this was obviously a human health issue, a pandemic, but it also had a certain environmental aspect, limiting where people could go and things like that. So we do know that the medical officers of health do have a broad range of powers, and I think it's important to note, and that the case law that is evolving and unfolding, that courts are also recognizing that climate change is a human health issue. It is going to have a number of impacts on not only the physical environment as we think, but also on humans. So,
thank you. Indeed, a dynamic decade, and we have to be dynamic as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Pauls, please.
Thank you, and through the chair. Thank you, Zoe. I was wondering, when we received this package and this bylaw, I don't know if you said it or someone else, is it a pilot project we're doing, or?
No, it's not a pilot project. I believe our ally, Stuart, mentioned that a pilot project will ultimately leave some people behind in a phased rollout or a limited project. So that is not what is recommended at this time.
Right. And if it was a pilot, I would wonder, where do we start? Is it up on the mountain? It's down here? Like, we don't really know. So I was confused about whether it was a pilot or not. So, but it's not a pilot. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any further questions. Thank you for your delegation today.
Thank you.